Yo, what's going on, everybody? Thank you so much for joining in. So today, I'm going to talk about my top 5 books I've read so far this year, because so far I've read 13, and I want to talk about some of the best books I've read. But since this is my video, I can do whatever I want. I'm going to bump it up to 6, because I can. So, if you're ready to dive into my top 6 books of the year so far, let's dive into it. Alright, book number 1, you probably already know what I'm going to talk about here because I've already made a video on it, with that being Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. So this is a book that I definitely wanted to read because I absolutely love the movie, as most people do, because that movie was just amazing. I wanted to see how the book stood up compared to the movie itself, and I can tell you that the book and the movie are definitely different, but they're both definitely very good. And I love how the book just really expands on how the actual park works from a technical perspective, because there's just so much going on, from even waste disposal to security systems to redundant systems that was not really explored too much in the movie, but it was definitely explored heavily in the book. And it's just crazy to think that, nothing went to plan as what you saw in the movie as well. But one thing that I also loved was just the characters. I mean, most of the characters in the movie are also in the book, but there's just a different tone to them in the book itself, especially Malcolm's character. He was such a ladies' man in the movie itself, but in the book, I mean, he kind of came off as a little bit quirky and a little bit of a romantic type of guy, but still very, math-driven, monologue-driven of a character compared to the movie, which I really didn't get that much of a monologue type of feel in terms of you were doing things wrong. I mean, there was jokes in the movie for sure where he said, yeah, that's not right, but in the book, he went on pages and pages sometimes of saying, yeah, this is not the right move to do. But overall, Jurassic Park was a 5-star read for me, and I highly recommend you checking out this book if you have not read it just yet. And also, Michael Crichton is such an amazing author. I've read Dragon Teeth by him as well, which I really enjoyed. And right now I'm actually reading Sphere, which I somehow have not watched that movie ever. So I'm reading the book right now, and so far I'm only 25% into it, but I'm having a great time. But I've also heard pretty good things about the movie, but I haven't seen it. So be on the lookout for that, because I'm definitely want to cover that a little bit further, a little bit deeper on that channel. So again, Jurassic Park is book number 1 so far in 2024. Alright, book number 2 I don't have physically on me, but it's right here. See how it's sticking to my hand? Yeah, that's because it's stuck into my brain now, with this being, of course, Before They Are Hanged, book number 2 in the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie. And let me tell you that I also made a video on the very first book of this, where I was explaining basically that I wasn't really just digging it. I wasn't really getting into it just yet until about the 60% mark, because I was just waiting for something big to happen. And it took a little bit to get there for me, but eventually we did. I had a great time with that book. But book number 2, in terms of the sequel, just stepped it up in every level that you could want out of a sequel. The characters, again, are maybe the biggest highlight for me. I mean, Sandan Glokta is just an absolute legend when it comes to character work. And I listened to the audiobook version of this, which was narrated by Stephen Pacey, and he does a fantastic job bringing these characters to life, especially with Glokta. I mean, just that internal dialogue. I mean, I can listen to that on repeat all day long, because it's just that freaking good. So, again, that is book number 2 by Joe Abercrombie in the First Law, and I can't say more good words about this book. I mean, it was just a fantastic read, and so many people have been telling me that you need to read the First Law because it's amazing. It's going to be a cornerstone, or maybe it already is a cornerstone in the fantasy genre, and now I can see kind of why. There's just so much going on. I mean, great characters, great relationships. The action as well is top-notch, and the world building is great as well. When all that is wrapped into a great narrator, I mean, you're in for a treat, because it's a great story with fantastic narration. So that is book number 2, Joe Abercrombie, Before They Are Hanged. Alright, next up is going to be by a indie author, being Devon Eriksen. That's going to be Theft of Fire. So this one I've seen all over the interwebs, because his wife is marketing the heck out of this book, and she sent this to me a few months ago. And I wanted to check it out because I see a lot of hype building for this book. And you know what? I want to check it out. So I did, and I had an absolute blast reading through the story. And as you can see, we have some things going on with this cover here, but we have a space pirate, we have AI going on here, we have unlikely allies building a relationship, and the action in this is also stellar. I had a blast reading through this, and there was a lot of like almost cyberpunk themes within it, or at least cyberpunk tech in terms of like the technology used, but I wouldn't necessarily call this, cyberpunk. But it's definitely sci-fi because it takes place in space with a space pirate, rummaging around trying to pick up some material. But somehow this person right here in the very front ends up on his ship, and then a lot of things happen after the fact. So this is definitely building up to the next entry in the series because it leaves you off not only wanting more, but also because you need to figure out what happens next. The big highlight for me was that this was definitely in a first POV perspective, which does not bother me at all. I know some people are not really a fan of first-person POVs, but sometimes you get to be a little bit more intimate in here with this character, with it being in a first POV. And overall, I mean, it was great. So overall, I had a fantastic time reading it. I'm going to make a full-on review on this here very soon. And again, space pirates, AI, crazy action, and a big old mystery that keeps you interested throughout the entire read. Great character work as well, with a relationship that builds over time that you really don't think is going to happen in the very beginning based off of the dialogue between the two. But, over time, it builds up, and you get to see it happen before your very eyes, and I was all there for it. I had a fantastic time. So be on the lookout for that video upcoming here pretty soon. I'm also going to be speaking with Devon Eriksen here on the channel sometime at the end of April, so also be on the lookout for that. Again, That's a Fire by Devon Eriksen. Or the next book is another one that I don't have physically on me, but I wish I did, and that's going to be Whistful Ascending by J.C.M. Berne. And woo, that story was fantastic. Another great example of a great narrator that just builds onto an already amazing story. And I had a fantastic time reading through this. The action was amazing, but also the character work was fantastic. The main character, you get to learn more and more over time, where you're kind of like, where you're trying to piece together his past at the very beginning, and slowly over time through different events that take place within the story, more and more is revealed to you. And you see a different light to this character sometimes, where you're thinking, okay, this guy has a past, and you want to learn more about it because he has some inner demons for sure. And it was fantastic. And also, I didn't even realize this, but there was sentient ships in here this entire time. That I just thought was a really cool concept, a really cool idea that at first I was like, is this a person? Oh no, this is actually the spaceship itself, or the space station itself. I love how this book can be super lighthearted at times, where you're just having a fun time with the main character, where you're actually laughing with him at whatever event is going on. But then turning the page over, some crazy crap happens where you are in a fiery rage with that main character because, something's going on, and he's mad, you're mad. Overall, a great time though. And one of my favorite things about this was just the character relationships that are built within this story, where you have some unlikely allies as well in this story, where you have, people or, beings that look like bears on Earth, but they're talking and they're smart. They're piloting their own spaceships, and they're very strong as well. But also, our main character, he has a past which makes him also very strong. And over time, you get to learn more about why he is strong. And I can't say more good things about this book. I'm going to write a full-on review for this as well, so be on the lookout for that on fanfiaddict.com. But overall, Whistful Ascending was an easy 5 out of 5 stars for me, and I can't wait to read the sequel to this or whatever else J.C.M. Berne has, because it was just a fun time. And if you do want to pick this one up, I also recommend getting the audiobook version, because this is another great example of a great narrator just, pulling this world open to you in your eyes, in your mind. Or the next book is going to be another book that I do have physically on me, with that being Dierock 88 by S.A. Ernster. And let me tell you, this was an absolutely fun read from an indie debut author right here. And let's look at the cover as well. The cover is fantastic, and I was hoping that the story lived up to the amazing looking cover here as well, and I can tell you that the story definitely did. So if I had to compare this to another series or put a mashup together, it would be Red Rising by Pierce Brown and Skyward by Brandon Sanderson, because it has somewhat of a YA feel to it, but not entirely though, because there are some very adult scenes that happen within the story. But essentially, we follow this main character on here named Atlas, who his parent, his dad, is being accused of being a elusive terrorist that is raining havoc across the stars, across the galaxy, and he is caught in the whirlwind of his dad being accused of that, where he is sent to this planet or this rock called Dierock 88 to basically live a life of mining under the depths of that rock itself. And there's some crazy alien stuff going on, some things happening underneath the surface that I don't want to explore right here at the moment, but I'm also going to write a review on this book because I had such an amazing time. And also, we have like this really cool energy sword right here, which I won't say it's a lightsaber, but it's something very similar to a lightsaber, which I can always get behind. So one of my biggest takeaways from this was that the action was just a really fun experience to read through, and there's also a lot of cyberpunk type of technology found within the story in terms of holograms and eye implants and neural links, and even more, even like cyborg creatures as well that just roam the planet as well that look very menacing and ominous. But I really enjoyed the main character in terms of his relationship, growing with this ragtag team of individuals that he becomes friends with over time on this almost not desolate planet, but it's desolate rock that does have some life because there's also bars and like clubs on here as well. So it's not a complete devoid place of life. There's some things going on here which I thought was kind of interesting because with a name like Dierock 88, you would think that it would just be pure hell in this place, but there's some glimmers of hope or happiness that happen on here. And overall, I'm super excited to see where the story goes. I had a really fun time reading book number 1, and I highly recommend it if you have not read it. And if you're a fan of Skyward, I think this is right up your alley because it has that similar feel to it, but it's still adult in terms of very bloody and violent scenes that take place. And I didn't even talk about this just yet. There's this species or this being or these people known as tech weavers that are kind of similar or kind of remind me of Netrunners in Cyberpunk 2077 in terms of having crazy skills or abilities that deal with technology. And I really liked it. But again, Dierock 88, I recommend it. Go read it right now. I'm going to review this very soon here on the channel. And there we go. And last but not least, it's going to be by another indie author, with that being David Hopkins, with that being the Dreds Crown. Dryad's Crown. If I'm saying that wrong, I'm sorry, but I can tell you that I am not going to tell you wrong when I say go read this book because I had a blast reading through this. So I actually have a full review on this on fanfiaddict.com where I gave it a 9 out of 10 because it's just a fantastic read and it's actually a little bit of a chunky book. But also, I'm pretty sure that David Hopkins treats this or puts this in the subgenre of fantasy in the noble bright fantasy genre, which I was a little bit confused on what noble bright is, but essentially it's the opposite of grimdark. There's a lot of hope compared to a grimness or bleakness in this world, which there are some dark elements found within it, but the majority of the time we do have a character who is always on the move, always trying to get better. And through the story, you go through the main character and a few other characters as well, but the main character's name is Silbury, and you follow her life from basically conception all the way to adulthood, where a lot happens. A lot happens, but the way this is broken up is into 7 books within this one book itself. Also, there is fantastic illustrations within the book itself. I mean, look at that one right there. Not like I look pretty despicable, pretty evil looking. Well, I can tell you that he is. So, if you do pick this one up, I do recommend it. It was fantastic character work. It was a lot of fun. The characters feel real. So overall, I felt like a high fantasy type of story where there's tons of magic, tons of creatures, tons of beings in there, and a ton of heart because you become very attached to the main character, Silbury, and the other characters as well, which I won't dive into that much further, but I can tell you that David Hopkins is sowing weeds throughout this entire story, where there is callbacks aplenty throughout the earlier chapters all the way to the end, where there's some... Or you know that meme with Leonardo DiCaprio where he goes like this? Well, I was doing that all the time going through this book, especially towards the later half, because there are some scenes that you definitely see a full, complete circle in terms of, where the story is going. And you can definitely tell that, David Hopkins had a plan, and he stuck to that plan because you see the seeds and they grow into a full-on tree. And you stare up that tree thinking, wow, that's a good tree. So overall, a huge adventure in this book that takes place over multiple years, and there's just so many layers packed in this thing that you keep peeling back new and new things that you find are really enjoyable about this read. And I also didn't even mention this, I actually listened to the audiobook version of this, and the audio version of this is fantastic. Another great narrator that brought this world to life. With that being, again, the Dreds Crown by David Hopkins. And there we go, my top 6 reads so far this year. And I think I'm just very lucky to read so many freaking amazing books so far. Really, I have not DNF'd a single book just yet. And hopefully I don't have to, because, I mean, I'm in a winning streak right now in terms of books. They are all fantastic. But, so yeah, those are my top 6 so far. But in terms of you, I mean, what's your top 1? Let me know in the comments below, because I want to know. And for sticking around this long, you've earned 1 XP token. And if you're already a subscriber, you earn an extra XP token. So, here you go. Have a good one. Keep reading. Peace.